Hey Playas, how you doing? Welcome back to Playas Guide. On this episode of Playas Guide, I'm going to be talking about retro gaming, collecting, and video game collecting in 2022. If you're not familiar with Playas Guide wants to be your source for retro gaming and video game collecting. We cover all of the new retro games and the current collecting market status across various consoles. You can also find Playas Guide on Twitch for daily retro gaming content, so hit us up over there. And make sure you're following us on Twitter, Instagram, and join our retro gaming and video game collecting community over on Discord. All of these are linked below. For updates, tap that notification bell and be sure that you are subscribed to the channel. So without further ado, let's get into what retro video game collecting and video game collecting in general is going to look like for 2022. So let's start off with the Nintendo Entertainment System. What I think will happen for the Nintendo Entertainment System is that it might see a little bit of cool down or just kind of plateau and stay where it's at overall, with the exception of the rare titles. The rare titles will continue to go up, but they are not going to really have a huge jump in price. They're just gonna kind of keep crawling up there in price like they've done for the past few years. So no huge spikes. The huge spikes for the Nintendo Entertainment System will come from the uncommon, underrated gems, games that people have sort of overlooked or who are new to collecting for the console. Are maybe looking for or interested in, or different YouTubers are covering those games. Those are the ones that are going to see a spike. So the Super Nintendo will kind of continue to do what it did last year, and similar to what the NES is going to do this year, and that is the rares will go up in value. Some of the hidden gems, those might see some spikes, but the ones that are really going to see the biggest increase in value are some of the RPGs and the popular titles. So the Donkey Kong Country stuff. Not saying that these games are going to command huge prices. I'm just saying that I don't see them going down in value. These are the games that will probably go up, and games that are worth investing in if you're a reseller, because you got a pretty good chance. They're not hard to sell, and they're probably going to go up. And what we have seen with the Super Nintendo is that some of the more rare and unknown games, sort of the hidden rares, really haven't gone up at all. Some have even gone down. They're sort of sleepers, and it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of people going for complete Super Nintendo collections compared to a lot of other consoles that people are collecting for. Now, the nostalgia factor for the NES and the SNES is both on the wind down, so this is probably one of the reasons that this is happening. So there's people who are getting into collecting all the time, but there's not as many as there was before. So that means less people going for complete collections. That doesn't necessarily mean the Super Nintendo is going to cool off. It might, but again, it'll probably sort of plateau or just maintain, much like the NES has done and the SNES has done last year. The N64. So for the N64, I think the rare games will continue to see significant gains. They will keep going up. The Nintendo 64 will still be hot. Prices will still be on the incline. However, I don't think that prices are going to continue to go up as much as they have the past 2 years. And for most consoles, I think this to be true for 2022. There has been an extraordinary amount of momentum behind video games and video game collecting for the past 2 years. That doesn't mean that it's going to not have any momentum in 2022. It certainly will, and so will many, if not all of the consoles touched upon in this video. I just don't think that it's going to have as much momentum in 2022. Now, the GameCube, however, the GameCube will have a ton of momentum in 2022. I think this could even be the craziest year that we've seen for the GameCube. It certainly looked that way towards the end of 2021. The rare titles just keep going up. The lesser known games with cult followings, the popular titles, these have all just keep climbing up there in price. And I think they're going to do that all throughout 2022. And some of the lesser known games and more common games will sort of follow this trend and probably be on the rise as well. Now, the Wii, on the other hand, the Wii overall will be cheap. This is because it is a console not a ton of people want to collect for because of all the shovelware. And because of all the shovelware, the overall trend may not even be to go up. What will bring up the overall price of the Wii is the very popular games and the hidden gems. Now, some of the rare titles we might see jump up. I can't tell you which ones those will be. We just have to kind of follow the market, see what's available and for how long and what is kind of selling. And what would happen there is if people see that, some of the collectors looking for the rare titles or completionists, we see that there's less supply for some of those. It might create a bit of hysteria where there's a buying panic. We've seen this before for many different games across many different consoles, and that might cause some of the rares to go up. But as of right now, the rare games on the Wii, it doesn't seem like many people want them or are looking for them. Now, keep in mind, a lot of these games are also terrible. Some of these games are almost unplayable. And this affects the overall price of the Wii market. But something that we will see on the Wii that I talked about in last week's video, and we've started to see across all of the disc-based consoles, is that as online stores possibly shut down, games are not available for download, or they are exclusive games to a console, they're hidden gems. If they fit into all of those categories, then for sure those games are going to go up. I talked about a few of them in last week's video. I'll link that at the end of this one, but please check it out and check out all of the state of collecting videos that I've been releasing lately that keep up with the market trends for every specific console. There's a few more that I still need to do, but for now, let's move on to the Wii U. What I think is happening with the Wii U is there is enough people out there collecting for this console right now that we are seeing less and less of these games available for sale in used game stores. And as that supply dwindles, then we will start to see prices going up because the people looking for the complete sets or looking to complete the set, which is a fairly small set of 162 games, they're going to want to finish it off and get those last few games. Right now, there's enough out there, so I'm thinking maybe towards the end of 2022, this is what we might start to see, or even come the summer months, if those games aren't available at the flea markets and yard sales and everybody's going to the game stores or eBay, that's really going to drive up the prices. But right now, Wii U is pretty cheap, and there's a lot of great games on this console to collect for. Moving on to Sega. The Sega Master System, which I recently did a video on with Oaz Rim Gaming. Check him out. He's a streamer on Playas Guide, streams every Thursday nights. And check out that video. He knows his stuff when it comes to the Master System far better than I do, so I had him on as a guest. The Master System is a very underrated console. It's a great 8-bit console with a very small library with just over 100 games, and there is only a handful of games that are actually really rare. Those games are going to continue to go up, as well as the handful of well-known popular games, stuff like Shining Force. That's those games are going up. But everything else I don't see going up. And those games, even then, are not going to go up and just skyrocket overnight like we're seeing with some of the nostalgia factor consoles like PS1, PS2, GameCube. The time for the Master System has kind of come and passed, and it's been looked over, and I don't think there's too many people that are going to go back to it. It's something I've thought about collecting for, but just never commit the time to it, because here in North America, it is not as prevalent of a console, and because of that, during its lifespan, you don't see as many of these games in game stores or even at conventions all the time. So they're not as available. And, you know, when it comes to 8-bit, we all love the Nintendo Entertainment System, and it kind of overshadows the Master System. Well, it does. It doesn't kind of overshadow it. It does overshadow it. So it's overlooked. If it hasn't had its time yet, it's probably never going to. Will the games go up? Most likely. It looks like everything's going up, but again, in 2022, I don't think things are going to be as hot as they were in 2020 and 2021. That doesn't mean everything's going to cool down, but for the Master System, not too many changes. The Sega Genesis is sort of on a similar path as the Super Nintendo. The overall trend for prices on the Sega Genesis is going to go up, but fairly steady, just not at a quick rate. So the overall library, I think it's gonna reach that point where the Super Nintendo is at now, where there's some underrated rares. The rare and popular games are getting lots of attention and hyped up, especially shooters on the Genesis. Those are sort of falling into the same boat as RPGs for the Super Nintendo. I think that might be comparable in terms of the relationship of the price of these collectible games. For the Genesis, obviously CIB is the way to go. I firmly believe that for all the Sega consoles. That being said, too, the CIB games for any console are obviously going to hold as a better investment if that's something you're interested in. But it does come down to price and space and condition when you are collecting CIB. The point is the Sega Genesis, I think, is going to remain steady, but it's going to head in the direction that the Super Nintendo is in now. Saturn is going up in price, but I think that the Dreamcast will probably be the Sega console that sees the biggest boost in prices, especially for any of its exclusive games that it had. And anything exclusive to that console is going to be hard to find online to play. For the most part, it may only be exclusive to that console, and this is one of the reasons why. This is also a console that has a bit of a cult following and is sought after for that reason. And also, I find it falls a little bit into the same boat as the Master System, where I just don't see an abundance of Dreamcast games anywhere. Maybe at a convention to a seller who is very pro Sega or is selling off their Dreamcast collection, but I do not see a ton of Dreamcast games at many video game stores. And in terms of like Goodwill, thrift stores, flea markets, yard sales, it seems like they're almost impossible to find at this point. The original Xbox, I think 2022 is going to be a big year for the original Xbox. We're going to have to wait and see and find out because it hasn't had its big year yet. And let's face it, Nintendo is almost at this point, they're making their games to be collectible, and Sony is also more collectible than Xbox. I find that the Microsoft crowd is more accepting of digital and streaming and PC gaming. Now, obviously, the Xbox is Microsoft's console, their home console. It's like a media center. But it doesn't seem like the people who really like Xbox are as into collecting as people who really like Nintendo or Sony. However, the original Xbox does still have some great exclusive games, has some rare games. Those are definitely going to go up in value. A lot of the rest of the collection may get overlooked and not see that much of a price increase. But if there is going to be a price increase for the Xbox, I believe it's going to happen this year. The Xbox 360, kind of in that same boat where some of the rares, I think some of the rares are going to go down. There'll be a few that go up, and it's really going to be a mixed bag with the 360. But as the year goes on and more stores, like used game stores, are trying to liquidate their 360 stuff because it just doesn't sell that well, especially those common games. Once we reach to the point where they become harder to find because so many places have gotten rid of their 360 supply, they don't really want it anymore, that's when we'll see the price start to go up on these, and it could happen towards the end of this year. There's also the fact that physical disc-based console collectors are going to recognize a lot of the rare and harder to find games on the 360 and the exclusives, which we have already started to see. So if there's a game you're looking for on Xbox Game Pass, or wherever you're looking to download a digital copy and you can't, then those games are the ones that you're going to want to keep an eye on. Xbox One, I'm not going to get into this too deep because you can still find these games in stores, but you're seeing less and less of them in terms of new copies. It's all about the Xbox Series X now. The Xbox One is dying off, pretty much dead console in 2022. So I think that's going to reflect the inventory in a lot of used game stores and online. People just won't be buying these games by the end of the year or early 2023. I think that these games are going to see a significant drop in price. People don't necessarily really know what rares are out there. There might be some speculation. I haven't heard much. That's something that we might start to see towards the end of 2022, people speculating. And now, a thing about this speculation is we've seen this with the Wii as well, and the Wii U, where some of these games now that we thought were really rare before are not really considered to be that rare. Hello Kitty Cruisers on the Wii U comes to mind. Now, I don't think that game is a common game by any means. It just might not be as rare as we once thought. But who knows? Those markets are still developing as more and more people go for completion in their sets. On to Sony. So for the PlayStation 1, I think that in 2022, the prices are still going to be on a steady increase. However, I really think that there is going to be a bigger gap between the top 10 tier rare games and some of the RPGs on that console and the rest of the library. I think that there will be, a few outliers to that, such as games that are just underrated and undervalued hidden gems, exclusives to that console. This is something we're going to see for all of these disc-based consoles, and I sort of already mentioned that, but I just want to drive that point home that, the exclusives, the games that aren't available digitally, that have a better version on a particular console, people are really going to go after those games now from a preservationist standpoint. But for the PS1, I think that a lot of the fighting games, the RPGs, the horror games, and the rare games, which kind of fit into those three categories already, are going to really go up compared to the rest of the library. You're going to see a significant price difference for those games. And now for the PS2, the same thing can be said. Those genres, especially the horror games, are very popular on that console. and they kind of had it all in terms of the horror games. So watch out for those. They're on the rise. Overall, I think the PS2 is just going to explode this year. It did last year, and it's not done. It is going to be the hottest console of 2022. The GameCube will still be hot. You know, the PS1 will still be hot. N64 will still be hot. But this one is really coming into the nostalgia factor hard. People are seeking out the rare titles, the exclusives, and we're going to see more of that because there's more and more people aware of this. And, you know, there's going to be more people trying to resell those games now where they might have, you know, stacks of them at swap meets already. And they probably got a couple valuable games in there that, you know, they want to get top dollar for. So that's what we're going to see there. For the PlayStation 3, it's going to get more momentum. And this is sort of where I'm talking about where the 360 is not going to have as much momentum. That momentum will, and then the Wii too for that generation. All the momentum for that generation of consoles is going to be on the PS3 because they had good quality discs. They looked nice, and they got a lot of great exclusive games to collect. Now, that doesn't mean a lot of these games are getting remastered or re-released by Sony or are available online, but I think in terms of collectability, for that generation of console, the PS3 is going to be the most collectible, and we're going to see more and more people seeking out the rares like we did last year, but it's going to get a little bit more momentum, I think, in 2022. As for the PS4, I think the PS4 prices, you know, we've seen them start to drop, but nothing too significant where there's value bins of these games yet or anything. We might see that towards the end of 2022. The only thing is a lot of people are still playing with their PS4 as their current generation console. The PS5 is kind of hard to get sometimes, especially around this past holiday season, almost impossible to find one. And there's not a ton of great games out for it yet. It doesn't have that library to really incentivize the people to buy it when there is plenty of the console available on store shelves. Now, that said, there is a new Horizon game, Forbidden West, I think it's called, coming out in the early spring, late winter. That will probably drive sales, and more games like that will drive sales, but I believe that is also getting a PS4 release. So PS4 won't drop too much, but as we see more of these AAA titles coming out that people who are fans of Sony, they're pretty much, you know, day one purchases or must owns for their libraries, those are going to start to chip away and bring down the PS4 price. So I think, you know, come Black Friday 2022, we're going to see probably some really good discounts on a lot of games. They already have their PlayStation hits that are $10, and you can get a plethora of great games for that. I would like to touch upon handhelds. I don't want to ramble on forever in this video because all of the different handheld markets are very different, but I don't see handhelds being as popular in 2020. Part of this is because of all the different like mini consoles, clone consoles, handhelds with like a bunch of different games on them. The handheld market is really a collector's market, and it's just not as popular to collect for handhelds as it is for home consoles for retro gaming anyways. But that doesn't mean don't collect them. I think that if you are looking for something to collect and you have a lot of what you want on the home console, you know, retro gaming collecting libraries, there is some great stuff that you can find on the Game Boy. Some good stuff on the Game Boy Advanced and Game Boy Color to look at. So take a look at some of these libraries. When collecting gets too expensive for some of these mainstream consoles that I'm talking about. Take a look at handhelds and take a look at some of the less popular consoles to collect for. The only thing is, if you get into stuff like Atari Jaguar and TurboGrafx 16, those may be a bit more expensive because of the availability of those products. Growing up, I knew tons of people with Super Nintendo or Genesis or NES. I didn't know anybody with a TurboGrafx 16. So these consoles are, a little bit more rare, and that makes the games harder to find. So there's other retro gamers very interested in these because there are good games on them to play and collect. And it is, for some of these, you've really got to look at specific games and what you want. And I don't cover too much of that on this channel, but I hope to cover more of that in the new year, and maybe bring on some special guests who are very knowledgeable about specific consoles, have complete sets, and are very in tune with those markets. But those are things to look at. And like I said, sometimes the barrier for entry for some of them can be a little bit pricey because the consoles are harder to find. But something like the Atari 2600, if you want to collect for that, those are still pretty cheap. Everything's gone up, though, over the past few years. So nothing's as cheap as it used to be. But I will be making a video on maybe the top 5 consoles, including some handhelds, that I think you should collect for in 2022. So remember to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for that. Another thing that I think is going to be pretty hot in 2022, because it has been for the past 3 years now, is different collectibles and oddities for your game room. Stuff like this Mario clock. I don't know what that goes for now, but when I bought that a couple years ago, it was $40. I think it's probably a couple hundred now. That stuff's going to keep going up. It doesn't seem to be slowing down because collectors want to have cool things in their game room when they're hanging out. We're still not, at 100% where we're out doing everything that we love to do. We're trying to. We're getting there, with this COVID thing. But a lot of people have put time and effort into their game rooms, and I don't see them stopping. I think that as more, YouTubers and collectors are on eBay seeing more and more interesting things and talking about them, they're also going to be buying them. And that's, I think, for a lot of the different weird controllers and oddities, that's just the way it is now. That's not really going to change. You can catch a deal on some of these things because of the names of the products. Sometimes people don't know the names, or they list them with a different name that kind of describes what it is, or they're just so odd not many people even know about it that you don't see it. And when you do see it, it either goes for a bundle or it doesn't go for that much because it is on nobody's radar and you just happen to get lucky. All that being said, I think the big things to remember for 2022 are to look for games that are not backwards compatible, not available online, or are exclusive to a console, maybe have a cult following, are hidden gems and are uncommon, not necessarily rare. Those are the games that are going to be going up in price the most. And the more popular the console, the higher the price it's going to be for those. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Playas Guide. I hope you enjoyed this episode and come back for more. Until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side.